How's it going, everyone? I want to thank you so much for stopping by and checking out the trailer for my latest course, Painting Compelling Textures. So, what this course aims to do is not so much talk about how to paint certain textures, like how to paint wood, how to paint rock, things like that. No, this course is more about talking about the properties of textures, essentially like a little checklist. Um, to go through as you are studying textures like from observation, or if you're going to try and paint them from imagination after you do your studies, of course. So the aspects like silhouette, um, how light affects certain textures, stylization, um, among others, are all discussed in this course. So, as a token of my appreciation for not just checking out the trailer, but also supporting me through YouTube, through my other courses and Twitch and things like that, completely for free, we are going to release the second chapter of this course, which is about the tangibility of certain textures, which we go into much greater detail in the course. If you're not too sure what I mean by that, but again, I wanted to thank you all so much for checking this out. If you do like what you see and you want to purchase the course, the links for both the Cube Brush and the Flip Normal stores will be down in the description below. And I hope to see you all later. All right, so the next aspect of textures that I want to talk about is tangibility. And so tangibility is kind of a loose term. So what I mean by that is when when you touch a texture, you think about, okay, oh, this feels kind of bumpy, this is kind of porous, it's kind of slick. That describes the tangibility, the tangibleness aspect of texture. And there are two aspects of texture or representing texture that define texture. That is the silhouette, which we just covered, as also this this tangible aspect. So now how we represent that tangible aspect is also a little on the tricky side. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint a rock texture. I feel this is a perfect example of describing the best way to describe this. What we could also do is paint a miniature moon. That's another great way to describe this aspect. So we will start by editing this silhouette into more of a rock texture or a rock shape. Okay. Now, silhouette in this case, this is more of a design use of silhouette rather than talking about the texture. So there are two ways of representing texture when you're painting it. The first way is through the silhouette, and then the second way is where it transitions from the light shape to the shadow shape. And that's why I mentioned earlier, painting the moon is also a great example. So if we do paint the moon, we'll just paint it right over here. There, it's the moon. And then it's a hat. I guess that's waxing. It's a waxing moon. So what we do is go in there. We got our different little those were lava planes, which the technical term is Maya or Mayar, I think, which the name for those lava planes on the moon. So most people know that the moon is riddled with craters, but looking at this, you wouldn't know that. So how we know it's riddled with craters is in that transition from the light shape to the shadow shape. So again, for another example, if we draw, so we know that the moon is riddled with craters. So if we draw a crater, or a hole here, and then super basic crater. If the light is coming, actually, we're going to drop that out a little bit. So as the light is hitting this way, this edge here is getting all its light, but the edge of this edge of the crater is casting shadow, which first it starts out with form shadow, and then we get our cast shadows. The form shadow might get a little bit of that reflected light, and then it would get. So yeah, so as you can see here, so the light from the sun is coming this direction. It's hitting this edge of the crater here, but it's causing this edge of the crater to cast its shadow. And that's how we represent it on the moon here. So what we do is we can take a bunch of, we can just in the color pick the black, and then just paint our little craters in. And then, because of how the light's working, we also need to make sure we we're catching the light on those other craters on this side here. This one I wouldn't do so much. So now, more or less, it looks like we're actually looks like it's a crater filled moon, because now we're getting the light hitting the edge of that other edge of the crater there. And then extend the shadows on this side a little bit. If anything, maybe we'll do a bit of a stronger that transition to halftone. Let's work on softening up. There. So that idea of seeing the actual physical property, one of the physical properties of texture in the transition from light to shadow into your light shape and your shadow shape. This is one of the clearest cut examples of that, is being able to see how pockmarked, how crater filled the moon is when you look at it through the telescope, and you can see it in that transition from light to shadow. So we will, so we're going to pretty much copy that example into our rock shape here. So, just for our simplicity's sake, we're going to, where's my favorite brush again? Nope, a little higher. A little higher, there it is. Okay, we're just going to paint the rock that color, right? Then, because we're gonna have it come this way more or less, it's gonna hit. Our shadow's gonna come right in there. Then we can identify other places that might be hitting shadow. And if you want to, you're always more than welcome to do your light shapes and shadow shapes in different layers. If you're more on a beginner and you want to keep those separate, that's a good idea. So that way you can make your bigger strokes in your light shape, and then and you can make your bigger strokes in the darker shapes if they're on their own layers, and you lock them. So now, in order to make it seem like we're doing a rock here, we will adjust we adjusted the silhouette of those shadow shapes where it transitions from light to shadow. We would do it in these shapes as well. Of erosion and chipping away. Let's see, we're actually going to. Oh, whoa, that was a little way dark. Okay. Just so we can kind of see that area better. So it look like we're painting a little bit of crack in there. Not a little bit of crack. Oh no. A little crack right in that section there. These planes here aren't directly perpendicular to the light source. So we're just gonna paint those just a little bit darker. That in a little bit, and then again, maybe little sections, like little divots and craters and whatnot that are going to point out to us that those are little divots, little divots and little craters and whatnot. And if I paint a little, you can paint little craters, and those will more or less show that there are little craters. If we add that light, like in this case here, the light is coming in this direction and it's shadowing the top section. Yeah, I think it's caving in a little bit more. So again, we are reinforcing. We've got our shadow shape. I'm gonna adjust the shadow shape a little bit more. We are identifying the more rough, porous nature of our rock texture, again, as it's transitioning from the light to the shadow shapes. I'll see this plane here wouldn't be getting that kind of light. Yeah, so we see right here, even though this is still technically in the shadow shape, we've got a little texture indication right there that is a plane change. Right there too. And then we can really cam it up if you want to. You can even push some of these edges out, if we wanted to. Make it seem like they more or less are jut out. Dude, I wasn't a super huge fan. The way that stuck out, but now comes the part where we can adjust that edge there to make that feel more like rock. Just for lighting, it would affect this. You get more shadow here than you would on this side there. Yeah. And then we can adjust the edges even more. Maybe try and it look like we've got some little pock marks, like just around the edges there. Not 100% smooth rock. Okay. I believe that's what we're going to call it for rock. So again, this to emphasize the idea of tangibility. Once again, it is describing through painting in a picture what we touch or what we feel when we touch the texture. In this case, through both the silhouette and the transition from light to shadow, and this rock is indicating that it's very bumpy, gritty texture, and that same idea is going to go for any of the other um, textures we come across. Um, so in this case, doing the having a having our texture lit in a certain direction to emphasize this ability, or not ability, but this property. While that's a good thing, to practice, of course, for like entertainment design, if you're designing like a chair, or you're designing a monument, a rock monument, or something like that, and you on your callouts you have, excuse me, you have your material callouts on the sides. I would strongly recommend against lighting it. And the reason for that is the artists that are making the models or whatnot, you want to make it as clear to them as possible what texture we're going for here. So you don't always have to paint. In that case, you don't have to paint the textures. You can just find images like of textures and say, okay, this is what texture I'm going for with this object. Um, but, for just practice, learning how to paint materials and textures and whatnot, giving yourself a lighting direction or giving yourself an environment to go in, and thinking about what this material would look like in an environment and painting it that way. And that's something we're going to go a little bit more into in the lighting section and even the glossy section. Those are good things to practice, to build up your painting skill, your visual library, and so on and so forth. All right, let us move on to the next one.